Hi guys, today we're going to look at the novel Spud by John van der Ruit. The first thing we are going to look at is the setting of the novel. The novel takes place at a boarding school. It takes place at one of the top private boarding schools in the country. It is an old-fashioned red brick building covered in moss and ivy. It is fancy in appearance and it holds great culture and heritage. The school categorizes learners as Year 1 to Year 3, matrics and then post-matrics, almost like grades, Year 1 being the lowest grade and post-matrics being the highest grade. There are 7 houses which represent each of the boarding school buildings where the students stay. The first house being King, then Woodall, Barnes, Finn, Century West, and one that is not named. Every house has 4 prefects and 1 head of house. Their responsibility is to look after the boys in their house and make sure there is no chaos in the day-to-day living. The head of school is always a post-matric who is in charge of speaking with parents, making speeches, and raising funds for the school. This is ultimately like the head boy. Now we are going to look at some terminology. In the novel, we hear the boys referring to prep, and this is the 2-hour nightly homework session. Then we hear the term finger tongs. This refers to being beaten savagely on the fingers with a blackboard duster. It is a form of punishment. Then we hear the term free bounds. On Sundays, all the boys have to leave the school for the afternoon, except the matrics and post-matrics, and they need to leave in order to explore the surrounding areas and get in touch with nature. Then we hear the term evensong, and this is an evening chapel service where the choir sings. Finally, we hear the term the bogs, and this refers to the toilets. Here's an overview of the characters we're going to cover in this video. Feel free to pause and take notes if you want to. Now we're going to look at some of the characters and analyze them in detail. We'll start off by looking at Spud's family. The first member of the family is John Milton, the main character, Spud. He is small in size. He is the scholarship winner at the boarding school, and that is the reason that he can afford to go to the boarding school. He is an excellent cricket player. He has a crazy family and has a soprano singing voice and is also part of the school's choir. Spud has not yet reached puberty and has small genitals. He is referred to as a late bloomer, and this is the reason for his nickname, Spud. He is also slave to Grant Edwards' nickname Earthworm. Grant Edwards is Spud's prefect and bosses him around. Spud is also part of the Crazy 8. He also plays the lead character, Oliver, in the school play. He has a girlfriend named Mermaid or Debbie. We will find out about her later. Next we're going to look at Peter Edward Milton. This is Spud's dad. He is an alcoholic and he is completely deranged and paranoid. He is described as being a loon, which means he is crazy. He regularly tries to hide his racist beliefs. He hates the neighbors and their dogs, and he gets arrested for indecent exposure. He bribes officials and gets in trouble with police quite often. He hates Wombat, who is Spud's grandmother, with a passion. He is a very embarrassing father. Now we'll look at Wombat, Spud's grandmother. She is from Spud's mother's side of the family. She is enemies with Spud's father and is also described as a senile old bat. She appears to have lost contact with reality, which means that she is also a bit crazy. Now we'll look at Jean Milton, Spud's mother. She is Wombat's daughter. She is a bad cook. She is a bit nutty and embarrasses Spud continually. But she is very proud of Spud and brags about him often. She is part of a book club and is friends with Mermaid's mother, Spud's girlfriend. She fights with Spud's father all the time and tries to prevent him from getting into trouble and doing illegal things. Now we look at Innocence. She is the Miltons' domestic worker. We know that she runs a brothel from her kaya in the Milton back garden. Innocence is always being threatened with being fired. She sells booze and makes good money on the side. Then we're introduced to Uncle Aubrey. This is Spud's uncle from his father's side. There is also Aunt Peggy, who is married to Uncle Aubrey. We then meet Lion, Aunt Peggy's dog, and Bar, Aunt Peggy's pet sheep. Now we'll have a look at Spud's lovers. Debbie, nicknamed Mermaid, is a beautiful girl and is initially Spud's crush. She has big green eyes, golden skin, perfect white teeth, and wispy blonde hair. Her mother's name is Marge, and Marge is a friend of Spud's mother. She then becomes Spud's girlfriend later on in the novel. She goes through a period where she is depressed when her parents get divorced. She spends time in England and returns feeling happier. She is committed and loyal towards Spud. Then we meet Amanda Lawrence, nicknamed Julia Roberts. This is Spud's crush. Amanda attends St. Catherine's School for Girls. She also plays Bet in the Oliver play alongside Spud. Amanda has long red hair. She kisses Spud multiple times and leads him on. She tells him that they will never be boyfriend and girlfriend. Now we look at Christine. Christine has a major crush on Spud. She kisses him multiple times in the hopes that he will fall in love with her at some point. She is heartbroken when Spud says that he is not interested in her. Christine comes across as clingy and desperate. She even has a fling with Gecko to make Spud jealous. Christine also makes out with multiple boys from Spud's school throughout the novel. Now we'll look at the teachers at the boarding school. First, we see Mr. Glockenspiel, nicknamed the Glock. He is the headmaster of the school. He appears to be very strict and stern. Then we meet Mr. Wilson, nicknamed Spare Rib. He is the housemaster of one of the boarding houses. He is also one of the adults. He looks like a goblin. He has big bulging eyes, one is squint, and part of his shoulder appears to be missing. He has a rasping voice and yellow teeth. He is also small in size. They describe him as looking wickedly fearsome. Mr. Wilson has 7 commandments and carries a cane. It is rumored that part of his shoulder was bitten off by a lion in the Kruger National Park, and that one of his ribs was used to repair the shoulder, hence the nickname Spare Rib. Now we'll look at Mr. Edley, the Gov. He is described as an extraordinary English teacher. He has a very posh English accent and strides around with a walking stick while swearing like a maniac. He has long legs, bulging eyes, and looks like a giant praying mantis. He develops a bond with Spud later on, and he is also the under-14 cricket coach. Then we meet Mr. Crispo. He is the history teacher at the boarding school. He is described as being very old, and he even told the students that he fought in North Africa during the Second World War. He dies later on in the novel, and Spud sings at his funeral. Mr. Sykes, nicknamed Psycho, is miserable and has a scowling face. He is Spud's maths teacher. He punishes Spud for being late. Then we meet Mrs. Wilson, nicknamed Eve. She is Spare Rib's wife. She is also the drama teacher and has 6 rings in her ears and 1 in her nose. She looks 10 years younger than Spare Rib and is beautiful. She has a hippie appearance. She also acts in the school play, but she has a secret affair with Rambo, one of Spud's friends. We also see Mr. Cartwright, an old biology teacher, as well as Mr. Zudenberg, the school counselor. Then we see Mr. Lilly, the art teacher, also the under-14 D/E rugby coach. He is horrible at this. We then meet Mrs. Roberts, the choir mistress. Mr. Van Vieren, Spud's Afrikaans teacher, Mr. Richardson, nicknamed the Viking, who is a savage-looking master. He directs the school play Oliver. Then we meet Mr. Sturgeon, or nicknamed Kojak. He is completely bald and is the musical director of the school play Oliver. Then we see Mr. Lennox, Mr. Crispo's replacement. He is the new history teacher that arrives at the school after Mr. Crispo's death. He has ginger hair, bushy eyebrows, and is described as being very clever. Mr. Lennox starts a political society which meets at his house every second Sunday night. Now we'll have a look at the Crazy Eight. First up is Sidney Smitherson Scott, nicknamed Fatty. He is very overweight. He is given the nickname Fatty by PJ Lutuli, who we'll meet later on. He is slave to the prefect Bert, and he is part of the Crazy Eight. Fatty gets stuck while climbing through the chapel window upon returning from an illegal night swim. The fire brigade then had to come to his rescue. Then we meet Henry Barker, nicknamed Gecko. He is very pale in complexion, looks very sickly, is the smallest boy in the boarding house. Gecko is very squeamish, which means easily made to feel sick or disgusted. He is slave to Lutuli. Gecko is part of the Crazy Eight and becomes best friends with Spud. Gecko is always in the sanatorium and eventually dies of bilharzia towards the end of the novel. Now we'll meet Robert Black, nicknamed Rambo. He appointed himself as king of the dormitory. He swears continuously. He is muscular, fast-talking, has dark eyes and black hair. He nicknamed himself Rambo, and he is slave to the prefect Gavin. Rambo is part of the Crazy Eight, and he forces the boys to go on night swimming. Then we meet Vern Blackadder, nicknamed Rain Man. He is described as being deranged and having slight brain damage. He pulls out clumps of his own hair and speaks to his own toiletries and is called mad and nutty. Vern has a bladder problem and often wets the bed. He is also slave to Lutuli. He is nicknamed Rain Man after the movie that the boys watched. He also disappears mysteriously at some point in the novel, and is also part of the Crazy Eight. Then we meet Al Greenstein, nicknamed Boggo. Boggo has acne and big teeth. He is slave to the prefect Julian. Boggo constantly makes sexual comments and jokes about women, and he is also part of the Crazy Eight. Then we meet Simon Brown. He is tall, has blonde hair and braces. He is an excellent cricket player and is also slave to Julian. He is also part of the choir, as well as the Crazy Eight. Then we'll move on to Charlie Hooper, nicknamed Mad Dog. Mad Dog is wild. He hunts bats and pigeons early in the morning using a catapult. He goes on hunting often and roasts his prey before eating them. He is slave to Bert. Mad Dog appears to be very aggressive, violent, and unpredictably crazy. He even breaks Gecko's arm and sends him to the sanatorium a few times. He is definitely part of the Crazy Eight. Now we'll have a look at the prefects mentioned previously. PJ Lutuli. He is head of house, of Spud's boarding house. He is African. He's described as being very serious and neatly dressed. He has a faint lisp. He is Vern and Gecko's assigned prefect. He was elected as head boy or head of school towards the end of the novel. Now we'll look at Bert, who is one of the prefects at the school. He is huge in stature, he looks like an adult man, and he looks older than he really is. He has crooked teeth, vacant eyes, and has a snorting laugh. He is Mad Dog and Fatty's assigned prefect. Then we meet Julian, also one of the prefects. He is skinny, has blue eyes, wavy hair, and appears to be cheerful and comes across as interested in males. Simon and Boggo's assigned prefect. He is also head chorister and he sings lead in the tenor section. Gavin. Gavin is a strange prefect. He lives under the stairs, and Rambo is assigned to him. Gavin has numerous unusual pets that he keeps a secret. Then we meet Grant Edwards, nicknamed Earthworm. He is Spud's assigned prefect. Spud calls him Mr. Edwards. He is described as being very clever and is a first-team cricket player. We also meet Greg Anderson, who is a matric rugby player that lies about having a sister who lost her legs in a car accident. Now we'll look at some of the other characters. De Vries. He is friends with Pike. He harasses the boys in Spud's dormitory, and he is one of the school bullies. De Vries caused a war with Spud's dormitory. Then we'll look at Leonard Pike. He is friends with De Vries and harasses the boys in Spud's dormitory as well. He is also one of the school bullies and caused a war with Spud's dormitory. Jeff Lawson. This is Spud's friend whose family owns a massive farm nearby. Jeff Lawson is part of the Oliver play and is the grandson of the MacArthur ghost. This brings us to the end of the character analysis for Spud. I hope this has helped you in some way to gain some clarity about certain characters.